All right, guys, so I just want to finish off with a little course review. Basically, just going back to the beginning, just reviewing a couple things. That way, you're all caught up to date for the final exam. So, these slides are posted in the module. So, that way, you'll have them. You can look through them. They are pretty comprehensive. So, they do have pretty much everything you need to know. Okay? So, starting from the beginning, economics is just the study of how we allocate our limited resources to satisfy our unlimited wants. That's what economics is. We are making decisions such as monetary policy, fiscal policy, to basically figure out how we could increase your production to satisfy your wants, right? So that's what we're trying to do. Remember, your wants are going to be anything that you actually want, such as food, goods and services, t-shirts, cars, medical care, all those things. That's what you want. We satisfy these things through the limited resources such as land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. All those things are going to be what we use to make goods and services. Okay? Remember, we talked about the different branches here. So macroeconomics is looking at a very broad look at economics, basically taking the same fundamentals of satisfying your wants, but applying them to your country. We're studying the behavior of the economy as a whole. Okay? We talked about the four types of economies. Traditional, that was basically whatever, you were like a farmer. So, whatever you produced is what you consumed. You weren't trading with other people. You weren't having a job as a lawyer providing services, right? You were only trying to survive. So there was very little economic growth there. The next economy was the command. Remember, command was where somebody was literally telling you what to do. So the government was making all the decisions. So they said, hey, you're going to work this job, you're going to be paid this wage, and then this is the price of the product. Market economy, this was basically if you were going to a market, you would have buyers and you would have sellers, right? And the price that they determined to sell at is what they determined, right? So the buyer's like, hey, that's too high, I'm not going to pay that. The seller's like, okay, fine, we'll go with this price. And they both agree. And that's the market economy. Okay, so that's private enterprise where you can own your own business. Okay, then finally, the mixed economy, which is found most in the world. This is a mixture of the command and the market. So different countries have different degrees of a mixed economy. Some countries have more of a command with a little bit of market, and some countries have more of a market with a little bit of command. But in essence, all of them are just a market economy with the government basically saying, hey, is everything going fairly? All right, so the government's just making sure that you're playing by the rules. All right. We do have the circular flow. So basically, this is the flow of money. This is going to come really in handy when you're looking at GDP, right? So the consumers, the households, are the ones that are buying the products. So they go to the market. Those markets will then collect money. This is revenue. They collect this revenue, and then they pay out to your workers, to your owners. They pay out wages, or they pay out rent to the facility, or they pay out profits to the entrepreneur. So all that's done at the market for factors of production. So the firms are demanding factors of production, right? The only way a firm can make product is if they have labor, capital, entrepreneurship. And so what they'll do is they'll demand labor and use it to make product. They'll demand labor to supply goods and services. The consumers will demand goods and services because they supply their goods, their labor and land. Because when they supply the labor and their land, they will get a wage. With that wage, they can then buy goods and services, and thus creates circular flow. We then talked about the production possibilities frontier. This is just a curve representing all of the different combinations of goods that you can have. So we like to make it simple of just like two goods. Let's say we had like pies and cakes. So this is the most amount of pie you can do, the most amount of cake you can do. And this line right here is telling you your production possibilities. This is the most amount of pie and cake you can do. Anything on this line is efficient. So A and B are efficient. Anything on the inside says that you could produce more, but you're choosing not to. So you are inefficient if you're on the inside. If you're on the outside, you are not able to get there, right? Because the line is your possibilities, and D is outside of your possibilities. So that is what we call unattainable. This line here is going to show your opportunity cost. Remember, opportunity cost was looking at the cost of doing something. So how much does one pie cost to make? One pie cost 4 cakes, right? That's what we're trying to look at here. So that's what the slope is representing. Economic growth, that's where we're actually growing our economy. We're actually expanding your production possibilities. You're able to make more things. That's what it's talking about. Some of the causes of economic growth could be a change in resources. So maybe you have more labor force. Maybe you have more oil, more elements, more resources like that. Maybe you found more land. Maybe you have more entrepreneurs. Maybe you have more machines, right? More capital. More machines make more production. That increases your production possibilities. Technology is your friend. So if you have technology, that's really going to help you out to increase your productivity. And so basically what an example of this would be, like pies and cakes, would be like if you bought an oven, right? You can use that oven to make more pies and more cakes. So therefore you would increase your production possibilities. So that's what we're talking about with economic growth. Okay. So the next thing we talked about was specialization in trade. When we talked about opportunity cost, comparative advantage, absolute advantage. So basically, if you had 2 different countries or 2 different people, you're able to trade, and you're going to be trading based off of the comparative advantage. So in this example, we have a farmer and a rancher. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take their production possibilities and you're going to put it on a graph. And on this graph, you can figure out who has the absolute advantage. Remember, that is who can produce more of a good more efficiently. So, for example, the rancher, he makes more meat, so he has the absolute advantage. Remember, absolute advantage is who absolutely can make more. Okay, so who can make more? Okay. And so in that case, the farmer would have the absolute advantage in potatoes. Okay. The next one was a little bit trickier. This was the comparative advantage. To find the comparative advantage, you needed to use the ratios to figure out, what is the cost of making one of something. So, for example, the farmer, okay, if he was trying to figure out the cost of one meat, we would write down his numbers. So, 8 meat, 32 potatoes. And so, if we did 1 meat, we don't know how many potatoes. So, we would cross multiply, and then therefore x equals 4. So that means that 1 ounce of meat is 4 ounces of potatoes. If you did the same thing for the rancher, you would just do 12 and 24 and 1 and x, and you would get x equals 2. So same process with the cross multiply, and that's how you find the comparative advantage, because now you're going to figure out who does it cheaper. So in terms of meat, who makes meat cheaper? For the farmer, he can make 1 ounce of meat for 4 ounces of potatoes, so it costs him 4. And the rancher can make 1 ounce of meat for 2 potatoes, so it costs him 2. So if you're a business, right, who has the lower cost, 4 or 2? And in this case, it would be 2. So therefore, the rancher would have the comparative advantage in meat. Remember, it is impossible to have comparative advantage in both goods. So therefore, the farmer would have the comparative advantage in potatoes. If you didn't remember that, that's perfectly fine because look, who makes potatoes cheaper? The farmer. 0.25 is less than 0.5, so the farmer has the comparative advantage in potatoes. So that's what we talk about with specialization, right? Where basically if you can make something cheaper, that's what you specialize in. So the rancher would specialize in meat because he has the comparative advantage. So that means he would sell meat and buy potatoes from the farmer. And the farmer would sell his potatoes to buy meat, right? So that's what's happening with specialization. That's what's happening with trade. When this happens, this is where you get the gains from trade. So this is where you really can increase the amount of production you can have. So basically you specialize in meat, you sell your meat to get potatoes, and you can actually consume more, all right? And you can consume more because of the difference in the gains from trade. All right, so the terms of trade are basically how much does one meat cost. So as long as the price of meat is in between here, like less than 4, greater than 2, both people benefit, right? So if the farmer buys meat, they will not pay if the price of meat is more than 4 ounces of potatoes. And then the rancher will not sell if it's less than 2 ounces of potatoes. Okay, so that's what's happening here. It's got to be in between there. All right. So in terms of price of meat, a good price for both countries would be 1 ounce meat for 3 ounces potatoes. That would be something that would benefit both people, both countries. Okay. So the reason this happens is because this creates the consumption possibilities. So you're able to consume more. All right, and here's another example if you wanted to run through that to really get some practice. Okay. In the next video, we'll talk about supply and demand. See you there.